Claire Matthews had stopped believing in the magic of love long ago, though she would never admit that out loud to anyone, not even to her closest friends. Once upon a time, she had been the woman who seemed to have everything: brilliant, driven, beautiful, and fearless. She had clawed her way into the male-dominated world of technology and finance, becoming the youngest female CEO in her city before she had even turned 30. People admired her sharp mind, her determination, and the aura of confidence that followed her into every room. But then one rainy evening, on a highway she barely remembered, her life had been cut into two pieces, before and after the accident. Before, she had dreams of traveling the world, falling in love, raising a family someday when her company had stabilized. After, all of that vanished when she woke up in a hospital bed, her spine shattered, and doctors telling her she would never walk again. The woman who once commanded attention in high heels now sat in a wheelchair, watching life happen around her while she quietly withdrew into herself. In the 2 years that followed, Claire forced herself to carry on. She kept her company alive, turned up to meetings with perfect makeup and crisp blazers, spoke in the same calm, commanding voice, and impressed investors with her brilliance. But when she returned home to her quiet penthouse at night, she would sit by the window with the lights off, staring at the glow of the city and feeling like a stranger in her own skin. She had everything: wealth, respect, success, but she did not have companionship. She did not have someone to hold her hand when the nightmares came, or someone who would look at her without pity. Her friends, well-meaning as they were, tried to set her up on dates, but those had ended in humiliation more often than not. The last man she had agreed to meet excused himself to take a phone call after he saw her wheelchair and never came back. That memory burned in her chest whenever she thought of opening herself up again. So she closed her heart, telling herself it was better this way. And yet, when Melissa, her oldest friend and one of the few people who treated her the same before and after the accident, insisted she meet someone different, Claire gave in with a reluctant sigh. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the quiet ache of another birthday spent alone. She told herself it was just dinner, nothing more. What could possibly happen? The restaurant Melissa had chosen was elegant but not overly formal, with dim lights, soft music, and polished wood floors that glistened under the chandeliers. Claire arrived early, as she always did, her wheelchair gliding silently as she maneuvered to the corner table Melissa had reserved. She sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, pretending to scroll through her phone but secretly counting the minutes. Every time the door opened, her chest tightened, her mind racing with doubt. Would this man walk out like the others? Would he look at her chair first and her face second? Would he give her that same look, half pity, half discomfort, that she had grown to despise? Finally, a man walked in who was clearly looking for someone. But instead of the suit anti-executive she expected, this man looked out of place among the polished diners. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slightly tousled as if he had just run his hands through it after a long day. His jeans were worn, his boots scuffed, and his leather jacket smelled faintly of motor oil. His hands, rough and calloused, still carried traces of grease that soap couldn't completely wash away. When his eyes landed on her, they crinkled at the corners with a smile that was surprisingly warm, surprisingly genuine. "Claire?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. "Yes," she answered, forcing her tone to remain composed even as confusion swirled inside her. "I'm Jake. Sorry I'm late. Had to finish up a break job at the shop. Hope you don't mind, I didn't exactly get a chance to dress up." She blinked, her brain struggling to connect the dots. A mechanic. Melissa had set her up with a mechanic. Not that she was shallow, not really, but she had expected someone from her world, someone she could network with, someone who understood her lifestyle. Their worlds could not have been more different. She almost opened her mouth to make an excuse, to cut the evening short before it became another painful memory. But Jake pulled out the chair opposite her, hesitated for only a second as his eyes flicked to her wheelchair, and then, without awkward fuss or exaggerated politeness, he simply sat down. No flinch, no pity. Just, normal. That tiny gesture disarmed her more than any rehearsed compliment could have. At first, the conversation was clumsy. Claire kept her answers short, protective walls rising higher with each polite question. Jake, nervous but determined, cracked jokes that didn't quite land and rambled about his father's old garage, about restoring classic cars, about engines she didn't care about. She sipped her water, half wishing the evening would end quickly. But then he surprised her again, leaning forward with a thoughtful look. What's the hardest part for you, not about the chair, but about people? The question caught her off guard. Nobody asked her that. People only asked about doctors, surgeries, treatments, or future cures. Nobody cared about how it felt. The hardest part, she repeated softly, staring at her hands. It's not the chair. It's how people look at me differently. As if my value ended the moment I stopped walking. Jake didn't look away. He didn't offer a hollow reassurance. He just nodded slowly, his expression serious, almost protective. That's messed up, he said firmly. Because honestly, I see someone strong enough to scare half the men in this room with just one boardroom stare. Her laugh burst out before she could stop it, echoing across the table. And in that moment, the walls around her heart cracked just a little. What followed wasn't a fairy tale, at least not the kind people imagine. Their differences created friction. Her friends and colleagues whispered disapproval. What was a CEO doing with a mechanic? Jake's buddies teased him about dating a rich, untouchable woman in a wheelchair. Even Jake wrestled with doubts late at night, wondering what he could offer someone like her. But instead of breaking them apart, these challenges began to weave them closer together. When Claire cried in frustration one night because she couldn't reach a shelf in her own kitchen, Jake didn't lecture or pity her. He quietly installed adjustable cabinets the next morning. When Jake's garage nearly collapsed under debt, Claire didn't simply write a check, she sat with him, walked him through business strategies, and helped him rebuild with dignity. Their worlds clashed, but instead of pushing them apart, they learned to meet in the middle. Still, the biggest battle wasn't outside. It was inside Claire. Every time Jake drew closer, every time he showed her kindness that felt too good to be real, fear gripped her heart. She remembered every man who had walked away. She remembered rejection disguised as politeness, abandonment disguised as honesty. So one evening, when Jake brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "Claire, you make me feel alive," she panicked. She wheeled away, her voice trembling as tears threatened to spill. "You don't understand. My life isn't normal. I can't give you what other women can. I can't dance with you. I can't run with you. I can't." But Jake dropped to his knees in front of her chair, his hands resting on hers, his eyes burning with a kind of stubborn devotion she had never seen before. "Stop," he said. "You think I want those things? Claire, I don't care about walking beside you, I just want to stand with you. You think you're broken, but you're the strongest person I've ever met. And if you let me, I'll spend my life proving that." Her tears fell freely then, not from despair but from something she thought she had lost forever, hope. Months later, at a company event, Claire rolled onto the stage in front of hundreds of employees, investors, and journalists. Cameras flashed, the crowd hushed. She delivered her speech with the confidence of a woman who had rebuilt not only her company but her own soul. And when her eyes found Jake standing in the back of the room, still in his grease-stained jacket, still smiling at her like she was the only person in the world, she smiled back, a real, unguarded smile she thought she'd never feel again. "Life doesn't always give us what we expect," she told the audience. "Sometimes it gives us something better. Not perfection, not a savior, but someone who sees us exactly as we are, and still chooses to stay." The applause roared, but for Claire, the only sound that mattered was the quiet beating of her own heart, steady and strong for the first time in years. Her blind date had felt like a disaster when the mechanic walked in. A paralyzed CEO and a grease-stained mechanic, it made no sense on paper. But love doesn't follow blueprints. Love doesn't care about resumes, wealth, or appearances. Love is about courage, the courage to be seen, to be vulnerable, to let someone in when fear tells you to push them away. Claire never thought she would smile again, never thought she would feel whole again, but because of Jake, she not only smiled, she lived. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Would you give someone a chance, even if they weren't the person you imagined? Share your thoughts in the comments, I read every one. And if you believe in love, kindness, and second chances, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Be Kind Always, for more inspiring and emotional stories. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who might need a little hope today.